Mughals. Table of content. Who were Mughals? How Mughals came to existence? Mughals overview. How Mughals came to end. Introduction. The Mughals were a Muslim dynasty who ruled over a majority Hindu population. By 1750, they had dominated much of South Asia for several centuries. Muslims were already living in India when the Mughals first arrived. During Mughal rule, Muslims averaged only about 15% of the population. Let's know about them in detail. Who were Mughals? Introduction. The Mughals were descendants of two great lineages of rulers. From their mother's side, they were descendants of Genghis Khan, the Mongol ruler who ruled over parts of Asia. However, the Mughals did not like to be called Mughal or Mongol. This was because Genghis Khan's memory was associated with the massacre of innumerable people. It was also linked with Uzbeks, their Mongol competitors. On the other hand, the Mughals were proud of their Timurid ancestry, not least of all because their great ancestor had captured Delhi in 1398. Also, from their father's side, they were the successors of Timur, who died in 1404. He ruled over Iran, Iraq, and modern day Turkey. Babur, the first Mughal emperor, captured Delhi in 1526 by defeating Ibrahim Lodi in Battle of Panipat. Humayun, Akbar, and etc. then continued the Mughal emperor rule. How Mughals came to existence. Introduction. The Mughal Empire is conventionally said to have been founded in 1526 by Babur, a Timurid prince from Fergana, which today is in Uzbekistan. After losing his ancestral domains in Central Asia, Babur first established himself in Kabul and ultimately moved towards the Indian subcontinent. Babur, the first Mughal emperor, succeeded to the throne of Fergana in 1994 when he was only 12 years old. He was forced to leave his ancestral throne due to the invasion of another Mongol group, the Uzbeks. After years of wandering, he seized Kabul in 1504. In 1526, he defeated the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi, at Panipat and captured Delhi and Agra. Mughals overview. Mughals. Mughal had their own tradition of succession. They made their relationships with other rulers in India. They appointed mansabdars and jagirdars. They made jabt system and had jamindars. Let's know all about this. So, The Mughals had their own tradition of succession. The Mughal did not believe in the rule of primogeniture, where the eldest son inherited his father's estate. Instead, they followed the Mughal and Timurid custom of co-partisanry inheritance, or a division of the inheritance amongst all the sons. Mughals' relationships with other rulers. You will notice that Mughal ruler campaigned constantly against rulers who refused to accept their authority. But as the Mughals became powerful, many other rulers also joined them voluntarily. The Rajputs were a good example of this. Many of them married their daughter into Mughal families and received high positions, but many resisted as well. The Sisodia Rajputs of Mewar refused to accept Mughal authority for a long time. Once defeated, however, they were honorably treated by the Mughals, given their lands, watan, back as assignments, watan jagir. The careful balance between defeating but not humiliating their opponents enabled the Mughals to extend their influence over many kings and chieftains. But it was difficult to keep this balance all the time. Mansabdars and Jagirdars. As the empire expanded to encompass different regions, the Mughals recruited diverse bodies of people. From a small nucleus of Turkish nobles, Turnaris, they expanded to include Iranians, Indians, Muslims, Afghans, Rajputs, Marathas, and other groups. Those who joined Mughal service were enrolled as Mansabdars. The term Mansabdar referred to an individual who holds a mansab, meaning a position or rank. It was a grading system used by Mughals to fix rank, salary, and military responsibilities. Rank and salary were determined by a numerical value called jat. The higher the jat, the more prestigious was the noble's position in court and larger his salary. The Mansabdar's military responsibilities required him to maintain a specified number of sawar or cavalrymen. The Mansabdar brought his cavalrymen for review, got them registered, their horses branded, and then received money to pay them as salary. Mansabdars received their salaries as revenue assignments called jagirs, which was somewhat like iktas. But unlike muktis, most mansabdars did not actually reside in or administer their jagirs. They only had rights to revenue of their assignments, which was collected for them by their servants, while the mansabdars themselves served in some other part of the country. In Akbar's region, these jagirs were carefully assessed so that their revenues were roughly equal to the mansabdar salary. By Aurangzeb's reign, this was no longer the case, and the actual revenue collected was often less than the granted sum. There was also a huge increase in the number of mansabdars, which meant a long wait before they received a jagir. These and other factors created a shortage in the number of jagirs. As a result, many jagirdars tried to extract as much revenue as possible while they had jagir. Aurangzeb was unable to control these developments in the last years of his reign, and the peasantry therefore suffered tremendously. Now let's talk about Japt and Zamindars. The main source of income available to Mughal rulers was tax on the produce of peasantry. In most places, peasants paid taxes through the ruler elites, that is, the headman or the local chieftain. The Mughals used one term, zamindars, to describe all the intermediaries, whether they were local headmen of villages or powerful chieftains. Akbar's revenue minister, Todramal, carried out a careful survey of crop yields, prices, and areas cultivated for a 10-year period 1570 to 1580. On the basis of this data, the tax was fixed on each crop in cash. Each province was divided into revenue circles with its own schedule of revenue rates for individual crops. This revenue system was known as Jabt. It was prevalent in those areas where Mughals administrators could survey the land and keep very careful accounts. But this was not possible in provinces such as Gujarat and Bengal. And even in some areas, the zamindars exercised a great deal of power. The exploitation of Mughal administrators could drive them to rebellion. Sometimes zamindars and peasants of the same caste allied in rebelling against Mughal authority. These peasant revolts challenged the stability of Mughal empire from the end of the 17th century. Akbarnama and Akbari. Akbar ordered one of his close friends and courtiers, Abdul Fazl, to write a history of his region. Abdul Fazl wrote a 3-volume history of Akbar's region titled Akbarnama. The first volume dealt with Akbar's ancestors and the second volume recorded the events of Akbar's region. The third volume is the Akbari. It deals with Akbar's administration, household, army, the revenues, and the geography of his empire. It also provides rich details about the traditions and culture of the people living in India. The most interesting aspect about Akbari is its rich statistical details about things as diverse as crops, yields, prices, wages, and revenues. Sul-e-Kul. Jahangir, Akbar's son, described his father's policy of Sul-e-Kul in the following words: as in the wide expanse of the divine compassion there is a room for all classes and the followers of all creeds, so in his imperial dominance, which on all sides were limited only by the sea, there was room for the professors of opposite religions and for beliefs good and bad, and the road to intolerance was closed. Sunnis and Shias met in one mosque, and Christians and Jews in one church to pray. He constantly followed the principle of universal peace, Sulikul. So, basically, Sulikul is an Arabic term literally meaning peace with all, universal peace or absolute peace, drawn from a Sufi mystic principle as applied by the third Mughal rule emperor of India, Akbar, who reigned 1556 to 1605. It described a peaceful and harmonious relationship among different religions. How Mughals came to end. Decline of Mughals. The Mughal Empire had virtually come to an end after the death of the last most influential emperor Aurangzeb in 1707. His successor Bahadur Shah Jafar I was 64 years old when he became the king. He shortly died. The rest of the successors were puppets to Sayyid brother who controlled them. The Mughal emperor and their mansabdar spent a great deal of their income on salaries and goods. This expenditure benefited the artisans and peasantry who supplied them with goods and produce. But the scale of revenue collection left very little for investment in the hands of the primary products, the peasant and the artisan. The poorest among them lived from hand to mouth, and they could hardly consider investing in additional resources, tools, and supplies to increase productivity. The wealthier peasantry and artisans grew. The merchant and banker profited in this economic world. The enormous wealth and resources commanded by the Mughal elite made them an extremely powerful group of people in the late 17th century. As the authority of Mughal emperors slowly declined, his servants emerged as powerful centers of powers in the regions. They constituted new dynasties and held command of provinces like Hyderabad and Awadh. Although they continued to recognize the Mughal emperor in Delhi as their master, by the 18th century the provinces of the empire had consolidated their independent political identities. Review of concepts. The Mughal dynasty was one of the longest reigning dynasties in India before the colonization of India by the British. The Mughal dynasty had conquered most of the northern India from the 16th century to mid of 18th century. There are some points which can be remembered. Babur was the founder of Mughal Empire. Akbar was the most famous Mughal emperor. Shah Jahan built the famous Mughal architecture. You might not know this. Akbar had dyslexia. Babur brought gunpowder to India. Thanks for watching the video. Also, do like and subscribe the video. If you want more reference, then join Brain Stuff with Kavya Gupta WhatsApp channel.